You need to build stronger hands. And on this week's episode of the Exercises Health Podcast, we're explaining why that is and how to go about doing it. We're going to keep our introduction and we'll dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health Podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Stromberg and Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise that's geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are exploring hand strength. All right, look, one of the most noticeable, impactful areas for people's bodies when it gets weak is their hands. Like a lot of times we think about, if my core gets weak, it's gonna mean I have back pain. If my knees get weak, it means I'm gonna have trouble going up and down the stairs. But rarely do we think about the impact that hand weakness has and a lack of building hand strength. I mean, we're talking everything from trying to open jars to carry bags to just, opening a bag of chips or doing stuff around your house. It all involves the strength and use of your hands. And when that starts to go, it can be a huge impact on your day-to-day life. But fortunately, there are some very simple strategies that you can start implementing today in order to build back your hand strength consistently and over the long term. And that's exactly what we want to discuss with you.
That's right. I think our hands are one of the most overlooked. I think we say this kind of a lot, but is one of a very commonly overlooked area when it comes to strength, right? Just like we've said kind of about feet, it's like we wake up and we just expect them to work until they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's like a whole list of things that you do in your day that you're starting to struggle with. For example, cutting really tough things like potatoes, or trying to open up jars might get really hard. Or, the other day my battery died and so I had to use that big clip to jump my car, like those types of big clipping things. That really highlights in a lot of people's life, like how weak their hands are getting, because we've always kind of taken it for granted or we've always taken it like, hey, my hands are just going to work. I'm not really thinking about the muscles there, which is not similar to how we think about the rest of our muscles. Like we always think about, we got to keep our core strong. We got to keep our arms are strong and our legs and our knees strong, things like that. But hands are definitely one of them. And when you start working on your hands, you're going to notice that, hey, more and more things stay off that list of things that are really, really tough for me to do with my hands.
Exactly. One of the interesting things about the hands is we use them all the time throughout our day, but rarely do we ever use them in like a max effort capacity. And so the trouble is that because we are often working so far under like our maximum strength capacity for our hands, we have the opportunity to lose tremendous amounts of hand strength without it being all that noticeable. And then by the time it becomes noticeable, that means something has been going on for quite some time as far as a loss of hand strength. It's not just something that has been going on for a few weeks or a few months or maybe even a year. It's likely been going on a decrease in hand strength for quite some time. But just because our day-to-day activities require relatively little hand strength compared to what our maximum likely is when we're in our 20s and 30s, by the time we get to our 60s, our 70s, our 80s, our hand strength has been decreasing steadily year after year after year, and it's finally reached the point where the requirements of our day are now matching what our hand strength is, or are just starting to exceed what our hand strength is, and that's when it becomes noticeable. It was a different story back in the 1800s, early 1900s, when a lot of people were out, working on the farm, working with their hands all day long. I mean, I remember going to our auto mechanic shop, not that long ago, shaking his hands like, wow, I can tell that you're a guy that works with your hands all the time, because he has really, really strong hands. It's very noticeable, but most people aren't like that. The extent of most people's working with their hands is typing on a computer, which from a strength perspective doesn't really require that much in comparison to working on cars, working on the farm, something like that. And so what ends up happening, just like every other area of our body, when we don't challenge it consistently, it gets consistently weaker as the decades go by. And unfortunately, even though the requirement as far as strength of our hands usually isn't that great throughout our day. The requirement as far as activities with our hands is quite high, meaning we're using our hands for basically everything throughout our day. And so once the hand strength actually decreases quite significantly to the point that, okay, yeah, now our daily activities are starting to exceed what our hand strength is, then it becomes very, very noticeable. So how do we go about building our hand strength? Because that really is the utmost importance for so many people. We have 3 steps that we want you to follow to help you do that.
The first thing is to get MAT. Yes, your hands have lots of muscles, like 50 muscles in each hand that we work through. So getting MAT for your hands is incredible, especially if you're already noticing weakness in the things that you're doing or an imbalance. Like if you're having a discomfort or something's not moving properly, or you're noticing like arthritic changes in your hands, things like that, that would be really a great time to get MAT and to get regular MAT. The muscles of your hands work just like the rest of your other muscles, meaning when you have proper stimulus, you're keeping them strong, they stay active. But because a lot of us sometimes overuse our hands or underuse our hands, or we've had some type of hand or wrist injuries, that can create a lot of muscle inhibition that never resolves itself because we never really exercise our hands. And so getting MAT to make sure that all the muscles of your hands are working properly can really be a big game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, MAT, like you're saying, Julie, can be a total game changer when it comes to building the strength and function of your hands. And it happens so quickly. I mean, the number of times I'll have clients, again, in their 60s, in their 70s, in their 80s, that are struggling with different hand strength issues. Again, opening up bags of chips, opening up jars, just being able to carry things around their house that they're used to being able to carry. And after a session of MAT, they're like, oh yeah, my hands are good. I can go back to doing those things 100% no problem. Because the loss of strength for them is a loss of connection. It's a loss of that muscle function. And once we reestablish that connection using MAT, the connection between the nervous system and the muscles, those muscles get contracting well again, and all of a sudden all those tasks that felt really difficult, where their hands felt really weak, now they're able to access all of their hand muscles immediately. And then they go about doing those tasks and opening their jars, opening their bags of chips, carrying stuff, doing little carpentry tasks around their house, basic honey-do list items and things like that. So MAT really is step number 1, get all those muscles functioning well.
That's right. And probably MAT is going to be the fastest turnaround when it comes to changing how your hands are feeling and functioning. The second thing that we really recommend people do is to add in hand isometrics. Often that is found in strength training, in your normal strength training. And if you already are strength training, you're probably doing some of these. So if you think about exercises that require you to hold on to something, and if you don't hold, it's all going to drop or it's going to fall or whatever, those are going to be really great for your strength because you're practicing loading your hands' abilities. You're practicing challenging your hands. So when people regularly lift weights, and especially when they lift heavy weights, you're going to notice that they often will have a much stronger hand grip because this challenge is a regular practice thing that they have. So some examples of an isometric challenge for your hands would be like doing like a farmer carry or just a carry with dumbbells. So you just grab dumbbells and you walk down and back or do a loop somewhere. Making sure they're nice and heavy. If you do something like a pull down machine where there's a bar or 2 handles and you pull them down, that is really dependent on you using your grip or your hand strength to hold on to these things. So if you think about throughout your workouts, what exercises can I add in to make sure I'm improving my, hand grip strength so that my hands are staying conditioned and really, really strong?
Yeah, deadlifts are another great option, with both like a barbell, a dumbbell, or even like a trap bar. Like we just got a trap bar here, or a hex bar here at our studio.
Yeah.
I know that's something that you've been using with a number of your clients, and not only to challenge their lower body, but it's also going to challenge grip strength, hand strength as well. So
or the rower.
Or the rower, exactly.
Rower,
yep, the rower for sure. All right, so that's step 2 is adding in, these strength training exercises where you are using your grip in an isometric fashion, meaning where you're trying to hold on to something that is relatively heavy, relatively challenging for yourself. Okay, step number 3 is then to start to do more direct hand and forearm work, okay? And there are a number of gizmos and gadgets out there. They're pretty straightforward. I haven't seen any that are definitely stay away from that. I mean, for the most part, it's like, you're going to have different like ball variations where you're just going to squeeze, a stress ball or a tennis ball or whatever like that. Wrist rollers coming in different forms and variations. There's different things that, you can go on any online store and find different contraptions to challenge your hand muscles, to strengthen your hands. And those can be really effective. They can be really effective for a few different reasons. Number one, it's not some huge event where you're trying to go to the gym in order to sit and squeeze a tennis ball. I mean, you can do that watching TV. Like if you're watching a show and you're not streaming it, or I guess now sometimes even if you are streaming it and commercials come on, shout out to all the streaming services that you pay for that then put the commercials in there as well.
I know.
Right?
We just found out about that. But dang it.
Yeah, anyways, so when the commercials come on, you can be like, all right, cool. Like during the first commercial, I'm going to squeeze the ball with my left hand. During the second commercial, I'm going to squeeze the ball with my right hand. Go back and forth during that commercial break. I remember riding the train in Chicago, like when I lived in Chicago. And the entire time, like I'm standing on the train, just squeezing the ball with my left hand a certain amount, squeezing the ball with my right hand, just kind of going back and forth. So you can do it during your commute, all right? There's a lot of opportunities to use these gizmos, use these gadgets to strengthen your hands and don't require you to go to a gym or to, pull up your online videos or, meet with somebody or anything like that. You can just do it very simply within your day without having to add in any extra events. And so that would be step 3, to start adding those in, that kind of direct hand and forearm work.
That's right. And the best part about working with these, stress balls or whatever item you're going to be squeezing or stretching or contracting with, is it can be included right in your day, right when you're watching TV, or I think you also used to do it in your car, at a red light, you would squeeze one and squeeze the other. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the beauty of this. You don't have to change your clothes. You're not going to get sweaty. But the big thing is that it has to be consistent, right? You can't just do it, once a month when you remember. Put it in your routine so it's like brushing your teeth. So it's like every time, like Charlie was saying, every time I ride the train, I was doing that. Every time you drive to work, you're doing that. Every time you're watching TV at night, you're doing that. And so that makes it so that it becomes a normal thing. Something big to remember about muscles is that they're always adapting to their environment. And so just because we're using our hands all the time, every day, to put your makeup on or to type on your computer, it doesn't mean that we're regularly doing anything that's very challenging with our hands. And so the things that you do regularly with any type of muscle group is what your body will adapt to, meaning it will change towards that. Meaning if the most challenging thing you ever do with your hands is put your makeup on or style your hair, that's going to be the maximum amount that your hands can tolerate over time, because it's going to weaken your system to that level. But if you regularly style your hair, but then you go to the gym and you do carries with 50 pounds in each hand, well, then that's the new normal. That's the new regular. That's the new consistent built-in thing that your body now is going to adapt to. Your hand muscles are going to change towards. So you always want to think about, okay, well, what am I doing? What is the environment that my hands are in, the muscles of my hands? If everything that I do is always light, easy, nothing challenging, well, then that's what you're always going to change towards. So what we're saying is, hey, you've got to start adding in things in your day that challenge your hands so that you can teach your muscles like, hey, we need to learn and be able to tolerate a lot of force, tolerate and generate a lot of contraction, and making that the new normal for your hands rather than your hands are just kind of relaxed and doing light things all day.
Exactly, and Julie, you nailed it. It's really about that consistency. I mean, you think of the people in today's day and age that generally have the strongest hands. It's not people who are necessarily carrying heavy weight, for 30 seconds at a time, 3 sets, twice a week. It's the people who are using their hands all day long. And it may not be like a max effort with their hands, but it is a relative challenge with their hands, and they're just doing it over and over and over again, for years. So it's not like you need to squeeze your tennis ball for 8 hours a day for the next decade, but understand that once you build a kind of very basic baseline level of strength with your hands, the muscles of your hands should be able to tolerate quite a bit and should be able to recover fairly quickly. And so you can do these activities where you are challenging your hands on a consistent basis. Again, think about stuff you can do at the gym, but also think about stuff that you can do every single day throughout your day. Just little bits while you're at a red light, squeezing the ball. While you're watching the commercials, squeezing the ball, the hand grip trainers, whatever it is. Just add in little bits on a consistent basis throughout your day, and you will be amazed at how quickly the strength of your hand comes back and how quickly it progresses beyond what it was before. But it just takes that consistent effort. It takes, you doing it frequently throughout your day, throughout your week, not just every once in a while, not just, a couple sets once or twice a week. Do it consistently, do it frequently, and it will change the strength that you have not only in your hands, but then that you're able to use with your hands throughout your daily activities. So if you are wanting to experience, I know step one was muscle activation techniques. If you are wanting to experience muscle activation techniques for your hands, like we said, this is one of the most impactful things that can affect the strength and function of your hands. That is our specialty here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg. You can see our availability and get yourself scheduled up for your initial MAT consultation and assessment by going to our website, www.matschaumburg.com. There, you'll find a big green button that says Get Started. You can click that, and you can get yourself scheduled up for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know who finds that their hand strength has been actually starting to decrease, and they're starting to notice it throughout their day, and to the point where it's kind of impacting their day? They're having trouble carrying things. They're having trouble opening up bags. They're having trouble, opening up jars. Share this episode with them, so they can understand some simple things that they can start implementing throughout their day and throughout their week to change that for them. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us and leave us a rating and review. Not only does it help people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise, it also helps them find our podcast when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.